It happened when I was in my early 20s. I had just started working the late shift at a local convenience store. The job was going well, but I dreaded that time of year when darkness swallowed the city by 5 p.m. That's the only reason you'd catch me alone at a bus stop after dark. That evening, the bus was unusually late, almost 30 minutes. Anxiety gnawed at me. It was my first week, and the last thing I wanted was to show up late. My parents had always warned me against taking shortcuts through the cemetery, especially at night. But at that moment, I cared more about my job than local ghost stories. With no buses in sight, I decided to walk to the next stop. It wasn't far, just 5 stops away. The walk started off fine, even refreshing. But as I neared the next bus stop, a sense of unease crept over me. The stop was oddly isolated. No buildings, no houses, just an empty stretch of road. My phone had no signal, leaving me completely cut off. The biting cold seeped into my bones, and I decided to keep walking. That's when I saw it. A white van parked in the middle of the road, its engine still running. One of its front doors was wide open, swinging slightly in the breeze. A thick plume of exhaust curled into the night air. My gut twisted. Something was wrong. For a moment I considered turning back, but I had already come so far. The next bus stop could be just around the corner. As I cautiously approached the van, the realization hit me like a punch to the gut. The driver's seat was empty, and then I saw where it was parked. The van was right in front of the cemetery gates. A cold chill ran down my spine. My parents' warnings echoed in my mind, but I told myself it was just a coincidence. I hurried past, wanting nothing more than to leave that eerie scene behind. Then I heard it, a scream, a child's scream, coming from inside the cemetery. I froze. The air around me felt thick, suffocating. Without thinking, I ran to the gate and slipped through the narrow opening. The moon cast long, sinister shadows over rows of crumbling tombstones. The scream had stopped, but now I could hear something else. The sound of a shovel piercing the earth. I held my breath and moved cautiously, following the sound to the far side of an old, decaying mausoleum. My pulse pounded in my ears. I peeked around the corner and I saw him, a man hunched over a freshly dug hole. His hands gripped a shovel, dirt clinging to his clothes. My breath caught in my throat as I realized what was lying at his feet. A small, motionless figure wrapped in a tattered blanket. Before I could even process what I was seeing, the man stopped digging. He turned his head sharply, as if sensing my presence. That's when I ran. I didn't look back. I didn't stop. I just ran, my heart slamming against my ribs. The cemetery gate creaked as I burst through it. My lungs burned, but I forced my legs to keep moving. I had to get away. And then, just as I reached the road, I heard it again. The creak, the gate, summoning every ounce of courage. I turned my head. There she was, the girl, standing just beyond the cemetery gates. Her pale face was illuminated by the dim glow of the streetlight. Her wide, unblinking eyes locked onto mine. But she wasn't alone. A tall, dark figure loomed behind her, barely visible in the shadows. Couldn't breathe, couldn't think. And then, she raised her hand, slowly, and pointed at me. A cold dread washed over me as a slow, unnatural smile stretched across her lips. I turned and ran as fast as I could, my mind screaming at me to get away. I didn't stop until I was safe inside my house, locking every door and window behind me. I never told my parents. I never told anyone. Days later, I heard about a white van on the news. The police were searching for its owner, a man linked to multiple child abductions, but they never found him. The van was abandoned near a cemetery. The same cemetery. I still wonder about that night. Who was the girl? Was she real? Or something else entirely? And the man, did he see me? Does he remember me? One thing is certain, I will never, ever walk past that cemetery again.